pleased to have you back, fella. And in fact, we've booked you in for now for the next couple, like the next four, I think, the next five even. So I believe we should be all right.
No,
So
you haven't put that in my diary because I'm
are you
not for
serious?
the next couple.
Oh
Yeah. Well,
crap!
in two, no, I can do next week, but the week after I can't do because I'm going to Germany for the first game of the Euros, Scotland v Germany.
Oh wow, yeah, that kickoff game, right? That's amazing. Yeah, that'll be
Yeah,
massive.
we'll beat Germany and then we're going to win the Euros.
You know what? I don't think you will beat Germany, but it's a decently competent Scottish team. Even though I think you probably want a little bit on the. How's Craig Gordon still there? Like, there's a couple of old lags that basically.
Not. He's not. He doesn't play for Scotland anymore.
He's in the
It's
provisional squad.
I don't think so. Is he? It's the
He is.
first choice keeper is Angus Gunn, who plays for Norwich.
Yeah, I mean, anyway, I think Scotland would do well, but I mean, I think Germany are underrated. I mean, I know they've kind of been in the doldrums for a while, but basically, a couple of young players coming through that are good. Got a good striker, two good strikers really. Keeper's always good. Yeah, they're going to be
You remember
fine,
that
mate.
World Cup? Remember that World Cup a couple of World Cups ago where they played Brazil in the semi final and beat them 7-0. That was
How
mental.
can you forget it? How can you forget it? It's one of the best games ever. I mean, not only
Oh,
beat Brazil, but they actually like destroyed them over the first 45 minutes. Never seen any team at international level be beaten by another team in that way. Brazil were in pieces. It was a national trauma. I mean, you could even see it unfolding as the goals went in. It was like, oh my god! I kept looking through the slits of your hands. It was like very tough for the Brazilians to absorb that. You know what I mean? So
they had that crazy centre half who played for Chelsea, who was like basically kept running up front trying to score goals and like,
yeah,
remember
yeah,
him, the
he
guy
took
with
it.
curly long
Yeah,
hair.
yeah. I forget his name, but he didn't help matters by just being so frenetic, to be honest. So
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, listen. Let's get on with the show. Welcome everybody to Brainfood Live on Air. Of course, we're talking about the Euros 2024, just around the corner, 2 weeks away. Going to be a very exciting tournament just next door in Germany. We've got a brilliant sort of year of sport. Obviously, we've got the Olympics immediately after that in Paris. So anybody kind of in European time zone, we're just going to literally be all over this. It's going to be fantastic. Okay, so listen, first things first, I have complained to BT because they failed to provide internet into my house again. So hence, I'm doing this on my mobile phone on 4G, and there's a good chance of it being a bit crackly and not ideal. So just wanted to make sure, firstly, whether everyone can hear me okay as we stand. So let me know in the chat whether the audio is fine. Adam is obviously in a gym or a bar somewhere, as you know, as is normally the case. So let us know if you can hear us okay in the chat comment, please. We should be live streaming this in a number of places. I didn't even check my phone in order not to disturb the 4G. But if you're watching this on LinkedIn, do let me know whether you can hear me okay there as well. And we should be good to go on there as well. Okay, cool. Looks like a lot of people are saying you can hear us fine, which is great. That's great stuff. Okay, let's get on with the show. Firstly, let us thank our sponsors, because without our sponsors, folks, we cannot do this show. This week, I'm very pleased to announce one of our new sponsors. This company's never sponsored Brainfood of any type before, but they've stepped in to really help us out. It's Mackie People, folks. Mackie for short. One of a number of very interesting French recruitment tech companies that seem to be expanding beyond domestic market. We've seen Welcome to the Jungle, of course. We've seen Basile. We've seen Figures. Starting to see French tech make an impact in European landscape, which is a welcome thing to see. So if you are interested in improving your assessment at the front of the funnel in terms of the candidate flow, too many candidates coming in, you want to give each candidate a great experience, but also make sure you assess them properly so your recruiters are actually only speaking to the most relevant candidates. Check out Mackie People. They are an assessment product that basically has a wide number of assessments for every different type of skill set, function, and job. So this is not just thing that is there for tech or not just there for sales. It's almost like any type of person you're recruiting for, they will have a validated test for. So do check them out, mackeypeople.com. New sponsor for us. Thank you very much for them. They look like a very interesting product. Okay, welcome back to Adam Gordon. By the way, hasn't been on screen for a while. I just thought we'd drop you back in. Delighted to see you here, Adam. I don't know whether you know what to do anymore. Did you read the newsletter last week? I mean, any of those things? You got to run through it, man.
Well, yeah, I mean, I did read the newsletter, but I remember I got suspended like last year for about 2 or 3 weeks, and you made it really clear it was like, I don't know, a performance issue or something like that. But I didn't even get any notification this time. I just wasn't on for like quite some time. Anyway,
It was a stealth sacking,
it's an
and then
employee engagement problem around here, by the way, on
that's
the
it.
Brainfood team. Yeah,
Communication issues. There we go.
I did read the newsletter, and I want to talk about some pretty interesting content that you included in it. The first one is the LinkedIn blog about talent density from a lady called Shannon, somebody who is
Shannon Anderson.
right, Shannon Anderson. She's based in the United States, and she effectively leads talent platform for a VC firm. Talent density for a VC firm is a really vital concept. The concept really is like, how densely populated is your organization or talent pipeline or whatever with people that can do their job really effectively and do other jobs. Um, it's not a bunch of dense people, which I thought would be quite funny. If anybody outside the UK is listening to this, you might not know that dense is a word which means not particularly intelligent. The lights are on, but nobody's home, that type of thing. So anyway, dense talent is quite a good angle on this. I find it interesting. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not entirely sure if it's a different concept to other concepts of like a pipeline of in-demand talent, things like that. But it is worth taking a look at.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, talent density, it's something we need to talk about. We had a lot, sort of very interesting post last week on LinkedIn. I posted something about what talent density is. Lots of people coming in. A lot of people have been detractors on that post. But there was a few people also arguing the case to say, look, there is a qualitative difference between this and earlier iterations of quality of hire, A player hiring and all those types of things. And I think, I mean, my understanding of the concept is density means skills per capita. So in other words, you want to get multi-skilled people into your company and as many of them as possible, which ultimately means that if you aggregated all of the skills or capabilities within your company, divide that by the number of people that actually work for your company, they'll come up with a number, and that will be your skills density. And you want that number to be as high as possible. So yeah, I think it's a concept that's obviously going to be something that we're going to care about. What it means for recruiters is obviously we're going to front load a lot of the quality control, and the quality of hire elevates to the right at the top of the tree when it comes down to priorities, when talent density becomes the thing. So something definitely worth thinking about. And I do think that Shannon's post was a very good summary, really, of where we were, and also she included a bunch of links that you could do further reading on. So well worth having a look-see. Bob, absolutely. What is the difference? That's subject to debate. I think it's something we should knock about in the industry, and come to a conclusion via further discourse, really.
I think quality of hire is about getting the person into the job who can tick every box perfectly, that type of thing. Whereas talent density is about having a population who can turn their hand to more things outside of the tasks that they've been given. And just as an aside, I honestly don't believe there's a company in our industry that's got more talent density than mine today.
It's because you work in there. You're amazing. Is that what you're trying to say, mate?
There's four of us, and every single person gets brought in on the basis that they could do 3 or 4 different jobs if we needed them to do it, like different jobs.
Yeah, I think
anyway,
Ed's in the chat here, and I think he actually mentioned something about it being highly suitable for early stage companies. And I think that's exactly right. You want to be very, very talent dense. Yeah,
it is mandatory for early stage companies. everybody needs to be a Swiss Army knife. There is no room for anybody who is a deep specialist in one thing, and that's the thing that they contribute. And so for the areas where I've needed real deep specialisms in my business, I have brought in people for short-term assignments, things like that, consultancy or whatever it might be. There is no place
Yeah.
for full-time permanent people in an early stage company like who can't turn their hand to multiple things.
Do you know what? This might actually solve one of the controversies that we have. Like, how do we fit it in? Maybe the maturation of the company is the thing. Because as the company gets bigger, you probably do want some specialists that just narrow focus, easier to hire, easy to organize, probably easy to maintain, sort of say, in the sense that you can just plug and play and they can just get on with it. So talent density may well be a characteristic of either a startup or a scale-up type of business. So yeah. Anyway, worth checking that link out. Okay, give us a couple more, Adam.
Okay. The Pew Research Center produced a report all about, is college worth it? It's a very academic paper, but the summary is, from what I read, the jury is out on that. I mean, that's really my TLDR on that article. I think it was worthwhile having a look at. My view is overall, and just to translate for Europeans here, when they say college, they mean university. And my summary, my personal view on this is, if you're thinking about a career where somebody could end up in jail or somebody could end up having some kind of like risk to their health, I think university is absolutely mandatory. There's not very much else that I really believe can't be learned on the job and should not be learned on the job. If my kids wanted to become accountants or wanted to be working marketing or most white collar professional jobs, I would probably encourage them to go and travel the world for a couple of years rather than go to university.
Yeah, that's a big comment. I mean, you are like a real parent of kids, so that's a decision or advice that's very real to you. And you're not the only parent I've spoke to that's thought about things on those terms. Um, I think the caveat on a college or straight university is also the kind of social capital, sort of say, that you can accrue by being in university. Like you can make some really important connections, for instance, that can help plug you into various places. And it's unfair, but it is the case. I mean, you just look at, for instance, UK politics as an example. I think Rishi Sunak, the soon to be ex-prime minister of the country, was he the only sort of non-Oxbridge person that was a PM in sort of the last
I mean, I
50
assumed
odd
he
years or
was.
something.
I assumed he was an Oxbridge person, but on your point
No,
about like
no, you're right. He
the
was.
val,
I think even on the cabinet level, everyone in cabinet in the Tory cabinet is basically from Oxbridge, and it's like, yeah, all right. I
I
mean,
think
you tell me.
your point about like the value of going to university for the connections you make and things like that is only is only really valid for people that went to Oxbridge or an equivalent like you did. And there's
Did
not
me no
that
good,
many. Like
mate.
if you went to the University of Leighton and Barking, you're not. That's not going to help you become the future prime minister, and you're probably going to end up working in a job. You may well end up working in a job where it's not necessarily going to be high paid, and actually, to I think this is all down to I don't want to get into politics too much here, but I think this is down to Tony Blair and his government. Did he not set a target of like over 50% of people should be going to university? And today we have in the UK like 55% of people end up going to university. That's not right. That's just pointless. For most of those
Yeah,
people, that's completely pointless.
yeah. I mean, I think there's a concept called elite overproduction, which I'm a big subscriber on, which is the idea that we have actually created very high expectations amongst a bunch of people who've gone through university, who subsequently all want to be consultants, accountants, whatever, white collar workers, and so on, and get the status and remuneration as they feel they deserve. But actually, that's not the sort of work that we need. We need people that are on skilled trades. And what Sunak's doing, national service, it's a little bit about that. It's to say, what, we're going to try and divert people away from university, and move them into skilled trades. But I don't trust the government to really do a good job managing any of this. I'm not confident any government can really do it particularly well in our current structure. So who knows? But anyway, topic for another time. University, it's very good to think about. We also obviously implications for us in recruiting. Because there are a lot of sort of job descriptions where we still look at university education as a criteria. So what does that mean if we're starting to challenge whether we should be going to university at all? Okay, cool. Give us one more, mate, before we get into this.
So I'm going to combine two. I'm going to combine two into one. So Microsoft's Copilot Studio is now giving you the ability to create your own bespoke Copilot, which is an obvious extension of the Copilot concept. It's very similar to like ChatGPT, offering the ability to create your own custom GPTs. That's good. There was another article on the concept of, it was the Institute for Public Policy Research about AI and jobs, and summary of that was like AI can help workers, it can replace jobs. Some jobs may be impacted and potentially disappear. In some jobs, it's going to help people become more productive and earn more. The outcomes are that a lot of people are going to have to like look for alternative types of jobs. And I personally believe this, like the most adaptive of the species is the ones that's going to survive, and a lot of people are going to fail to keep up as their job really does become eaten away at by automated technologies, including generative AI. So in recruiting, my view is, and I've said this before, in the near future, as in within the next 5 years, there's going to be a lot less people actually filling jobs. However, there will be more varied jobs within a talent acquisition function for the people who can adapt.
Yeah. What do we think of Adam's perspective there? Less people doing the work, more multi-skilled. Is that linked to talent density? I think it is. It is also sort of thinking AI enabled, highly skilled individuals, high impact individuals, less of them, and just less of the and less of the bulk. And the question there is, what does the bulk do? Yeah, it's a very interesting scenario. By the way, anybody at the beta level with Microsoft Copilot, let me know in the comments. I would love to get your thoughts on what that looks like. And in fact, that's a Brainfood Live topic right there. So if you have access to the Microsoft Studio and you've built a Copilot, let me know because I want to see how it works. And we'll do a show on that, maybe do a demo and stuff like this. Okay, cool. Let's get on with this. We're talking about expanding scope. I think it's also tangentially related to what we're saying. It's the idea that, TA's been specialist for a long while. In fact, we've spent the last 10 years or so trying to really specialize and distinguish ourselves away from the rest of people work. But is it now time for us to roll back towards our cousins in L&D and Comp and Benz and all of those places and start taking on a more holistic view of what talent looks like? I think we should. We've got a bunch of people that are on different stages of the journey to come and join us. Let's bring them on screen and we'll see how we're going to do it. I was going to bring everyone on screen, by the way, at the same time, but I might need to do a round robin. The reason why is because I'm concerned on bandwidth, because this is all on 4G at this point and we're holding it. But I think if we get 6 people on screen, it might just decide to collapse. So let's try and get, I think we'll go Manjuri and Yas if he's there, and Brandon and Christine will bring you on in a minute. I hope that's okay. You're about to say something, so go ahead.
Yeah, while we're bringing our guests on, I just want to give you my opinion on this subject, and that is that talent acquisition is going to need to become is going to need to assume responsibility for how do we get our tasks done as an organization, whether that is hiring individuals on permanent jobs, on contract jobs, on temp jobs, on freelance basis, whether it's outsourcing those tasks, whether it is a technology solution. and it's going to have to become like, how do we get our tasks done as an organization? So I think that this is a really great conversation to be having, and I can't wait to find out what Manjuri and Yasser have got to say about this.
But well, firstly, let's deal with the fact there's two Yassers on screen, which I find really disturbing. And I do believe you'll be speaking in stereo when you do say something. Yeah, so we're going to try and remove one of those folks if that's okay. I'm going to try and get rid of one of you, and then hopefully that's only one of you goes. Okay, let's see what happens.
Come back if he gets rid of both of you. Yeah, sir.
Oh, he has. Both of them have gone. So okay. Whilst we fiddle with this, hopefully we can mute one of them and we'll be okay. Let's introduce Manjuri. Great to see you, Manjuri. Why don't you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Hey, home. Hey, Adam. Nice to be here. Good to be back here, actually. Long time. I'm Manjari Sinha. I am Vice President for Talent Success and DEI for OLX Group globally. And I take care of all of talent spanning from employer branding, or what I call as talent branding, to acquisition, to talent development, engagement, as well as DEI for the group.
Fantastic stuff. I've just shared Manjuri's I've just shared Manjuri's link into the chat stream there, so make sure you go and connect with her. Okay, whilst we try and get Yas back on, let me just invite again. You were actually one of the first people that came to mind when we were doing this show. I think we did one similar to this a year ago, and I wanted to get you on for that. And it was because we have Yas on. Fantastic. Yasser, wonderful to see you, and only one of you. So quickly introduce yourself, Yasser. Who are you? What it is you do?
Hi, everyone. My name is Yasser. Hopefully you can hear me. There's not two of me. I'm the VP of People at HelloFresh. No longer a long title.
I'm pleased to hear it. I mean, probably it was one of those signage problems, right? Sort of your business card cost too much on the printing press. But great to see you.
That's why they had to clone him. That's why they had to clone him for this show, because he was doing so much.
Right. Okay, let's redirect this. I mean, it was directed to Manjuri, so let's roll it with this. You were one of the first people I knew that was kind of going upwards and onwards and upwards with TA. When was it that you thought, you know what, I wanted to expand scope and build a more kind of a more T-shaped sort of career within talent? What was the driver behind that, and why was it important for you in your own career thought process?
A driver behind that home were twofold, actually. So one was we had this initiative to launch an internal mobility program last year. And I stepped up and said, hey, I'm going to design it with my team. And this was, where does it sit? Where does it sit with TA or TD? And we took the ownership, rolled it out. It was super great. And we saw the advantages of going beyond talent acquisition as such. So that was the first step as such. The second was my inspiration from Josh Berson's systemic HR model. There were a lot of challenges that we've seen in global company across different continents, etc. And we had seen those challenges based in silos. When you talk about the buy, borrow, and grow decisions, you would have a zillion conversations because these teams are based in or sitting in silos. So when we looked at right-sizing our organization beginning of last year, this was something that I proposed to my leader at that point of time, and she was also of the same opinion, our CHRO then, and we sat down and designed to bring all of talent all together, and got the opportunity also to step up and take care of this organization. So that was the idea of looking at a seamless talent experience for all of our employees to get this together as such. That was the kick, and the inspiration was our dear Josh Berson.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's been a big evangelist of this idea, breaking down the silos. We've got obviously these, I wouldn't say ossified is probably unkind, but we do have like very clear definitions as to what these internal roles are. And there's a separation. And probably we experience the separation most obviously in things like onboarding, for instance. We hire somebody and then, okay, what happens to that person? Are they now do we flip them over to someone else, throw it over the fence? Obviously, that's part of the terrible experience. We know that doesn't work. So imagine that times, multiple use cases, particularly with people wanting to move up and through a process in a business, then it might make sense to do that. Yes, before I want to definitely go to you in a moment, but I want to sort of talk about the politics of this, because Manjuri, you said you wanted to do the internal mobility. A lot of people might say, yo, that's not you. Your external recruiter, that's going to be TD. Did you encounter that? And if so, what was that situation? And or did you not encounter it? What was the history behind that?
I did slightly in the beginning, but then tried to collaborate with the talent development team. And we also kind of looked at how the project is set up. But initially, we took the step ahead because it was to sit in the internal marketplace, which is more on our ATS at that point of time, because our internal talent platform was not serving as the marketplace at that point of time. So tooling also helped us there. But we worked collaboratively in that manner. We also looked at, hey, this is ultimately a talent challenge that we have to solve, whether it be external or internal, doesn't matter where the talent comes from. So I think that was the proposal, and it was also an initiative, Hong, in a way that I'd taken and proposed to our CEO. So also had the blessing from him that, okay, you kind of run this, and that's when we drove this and developed this. So I wouldn't say it was a major challenge. Initially, yes, it was a little bit odd for people that why is this coming from TA and not from TD? But then we worked together a bit, led by TA, and then rolled this out.
Yeah, very good. Two things I'm taking out of this. Number one, you took initiative. It wasn't the case of just sitting there waiting for the responsibility to be allocated to you. You actually went forward and said, you know what, I reckon this is something I can do. I should be doing this. You won the argument there. And secondly, the tooling is probably underrated. Like, for instance, if there was an internal mobility tool that worked and it was managed by, let's say, another function outside of TA, you can imagine that the internal mobility would naturally migrate there. So if you're thinking about this, folks, have a look at your ATS. Does it have a function that kind of is adaptable to something in internal mobility? That may actually be a very important sort of feature if this is the direction you want to go in. So let's go to you on this. You were just a bit more Machiavellian, as I understand. I mean, I remember a conversation. Tell us a little bit about the story here, because you arrived at HelloFresh as TA, right?
Yeah.
And then certainly you absorbed multiple sort of responsibilities. Why did that happen? Can you give us that story?
Yeah, sure. So I now manage 9 teams, and it started off like a year ago. I was only managing 3, and then I joined only managing 1 talent. And it started off as a joke, actually. It was 9 months into my journey. I kind of made a joke saying, look, rewards is just holding us up, or mobility is holding us up. A bit like what you talked about, onboarding kind of being the cutoff, and then you kind of feeling like, oh, frustrated. So I can do that. Like, just give it to me when you're ready to give it to me. And I said that to my founder and one of my CHROs as a joke, just kind of like taking the piss. And then 6 months on, there was an opportunity where they didn't have someone filling that position. And then they came to me and said, do you want to do this? And I said, yeah, of course. Not knowing what rewards really entails, just jumping into it head first, and not regretting it, but it was definitely intense, right? And so that just kind of, because I had already developed the TA team, built it up, it was established, we'd done our hiring, taking on new teams was about the reputation. Okay, I've already got a good reputation with the business stakeholders. They trust me. So taking on rewards, they trust me with that. And then same with mobility. It was a bit easier for them to kind of digest and say, yeah, you know what, he deserves that, or let's give him that. And then more recently, that's basically how more doors are being opened. They're like, oh, okay, we've gone from A to B. We can clearly see the transition. NPS is up. Customer engagement or stakeholder engagement is up. Let's give you more. Let's give you more. And then now it's got to the point where I actually had to turn down stuff because I'm not getting paid more. It's like I just need to chill out a bit. Like at some point, taking on too many teams is not a good thing either. You want to really deliver well.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of things again to think about there. Firstly, get your own house in order. So you got to make sure the TA is firing and doing well. If you've got a new job as head of TA, presumably there's a reason for that, the vacancy. So you got to try and secure improvements and make sure business as usual is operating, but also try and deliver those improvements. And then say something, you got to say it before the opportunity arises, I guess. You can say, look, when that happens, maybe there's a movement in a different department, a company at the higher level. It's a headache for them to try and recruit externally for that senior level role, if they feel someone internally could absorb that responsibility, then it may be an easier decision for them to make. Even on a trial basis, they could say, look, do this as interim, and alongside what you're doing, and then you've got effectively a trial period to take this on. So yeah, very interesting. Let's talk about sort of the difficulties, because obviously there's a domain sort of gap, isn't there? There's a knowledge gap. Your expertise, comfort zone is in TA, both of you. How do you bridge the knowledge gap into a domain that you're not familiar with? Were there any ways in which you could accelerate that, or that you can look back on now to say, you know what, if I did this, I would have gone faster in knowledge acquisition? Anybody can answer this question.
I'll go maybe first, just because for me, I'm not an expert in rewards or mobility at all. At a certain level, you don't need to be either. You need to understand like what the customer needs are and try to focus on those. And then what does efficiency look like? Actually, I think the fact that I don't know, or I'm not a specialist, removes any bias and allows me to actually look at it a bit more holistically from an operations standpoint. And that's what's helped me. Okay, we're doing this at the moment, we need to do that. How quickly can we do it? And that's what's always helped me kind of develop our different teams, especially with the rewards. And it's the simple things, right? And the prioritization of things. How do you prioritize work? Ensuring that we fight for capacity. That's another thing. I think TA leaders are exceptional at fighting for capacity. You know, say my team deserves this. I need X amount of recruiters. When I joined the rewards team, I was like, okay, you guys are understaffed. How come you're not staffed? And then suddenly they're like, oh, because we didn't know how to ask. I'm like, well, this is how you ask. You measure your capacity. This is what you need to say. Let's go and ask for extra headcount. And I think that's what they expect from you, your team as a leader. And if you show them that, you get less resistance, because that was my initial feedback from my team. They're like, oh, well, why you? And then eventually after a month, they're like, oh, okay, now we understand why you're taking over the team. You're not an expert, but you're a good leader in X, Y, Z, which is what we need.
Yeah, really
there's a direct
Go ahead.
There's a direct link between where you are in terms of as an individual contributor or as a leader. There's a direct link between that and your degree of expertise. So, you know, if you're an individual contributor, you need to be a real deep expert, and the further away from that you are, the necessity is less.
I think I also had a similar experience. I think number one on this one was the challenge was actually, you know, a challenge reverses. For example, if you are recognized as a good leader, people want to work for you. And that's one of the magnetic elements of when we got the team together. I didn't have anybody who said that, why Manjari, right? They were very happy. And that was one. And second, they had worked in different projects, etc., along the time when I was head of tech TA and then director of TA and taken over all of TA. So they saw the elements coming. Second, I'll also again lean on Josh here, because he talks about falling in love with the problem. On the one hand, yes, because I come from a background of HR business partnering, corporate HR, so I have multiple backgrounds apart from TA. But when I looked at what we needed to prioritize for the first quick wins in the 6-7 months, I actually looked at what problems we needed to solve. And that's where it started from. Of course, we have, like Adam said, you know, individual contributors who are real experts on the ground as well. But when we are looking at what should we try to release, what are we looking at? Releasing the AI coach for our managers, that was one of the quick wins that I saw. So when somebody raised their hand up, we want to do this, yes, let's do this. Let's drive engagement through manager excellence programs and capabilities, etc. So when you do that, you get the quick acceptance from the stakeholders as well as your team. So I think that bridge at this particular level is easier to make. The other thing is figuring it out. I don't think any one of us would be even leading a talent acquisition organization without the ability of figuring it out, because even though you have the expertise, the moment you get into a new country or a new field or a new skill, you are posed with a challenge of, okay, let's figure this out. How do we get these people on board? How do we tackle a challenge of another 500 or 600 people in a random country, in a random city? So that figuring it out capability and skill is, I think, what also keeps the TA leaders apart. And one of the things that I keep on reiterating, because I'm consulting two talent leaders at the moment who are bringing talent together, is what Yasser also said earlier. Your TA house needs to be functioning like a machine. It literally needs to deliver. It has to have that recognition from the stakeholders that TA is fine. Because the moment you drop the ball there, everything else will be forgotten. And unless you have a clean house there, nothing else really matters. That's something that I've totally experienced.
Okay, really good points. Again, Manju, you're stretching my memory because you make so many good points in these soliloquies. I can't even remember all of them. But the credibility issue is super important. So look at recognize there may be some resistance. People might be territorial, or they may identify in a certain way. For instance, we do that. Recruiters identify as recruiters. We've actually spent last 10 years cultivating separation between us and HR, right? So we're as guilty as this as anybody. Don't expect the L&D or TD don't do the same. I'm sure they do. So if you're coming from the outside, how would you feel if L&D took over a TA, for instance? If a senior person dropped in from that side, you might also ask a question, why this person? So as a leader making that move, you've got to recognize there might be some resistance. You could multiple ways in which you could take that on. But one of the ways, of course, is to immediately solve some problems that group had, whether it's capacity issue that you mentioned, Yas, or whether there was a more external project that was visible for the rest of the business, as you mentioned, at Manjuri. And of course, you got to get your house in order. Like, your house has to be in order before you even think about accepting it. Because if you're overly strained trying to do business as usual, you take something else on, or everything is going to collapse, and you're going to not be in that business for very long in any role. So, okay, very, very interesting. Adam, go ahead.
A question for Yasser and Manjuri. So, like, I actually don't. Your point about Hung, like, how would we feel if somebody from L&D dropped in and looked after talent acquisition? I don't think it matters at all. I don't think it matters. I don't even think they have to have any background in any people-related discipline. They just have to be a great leader who can. I can't remember the words Manjuri used, but it was effectively solve problems and work out how to deal with things. I don't think somebody could come from finance and do that. They could come from IT and do that. They could come from operations and do that. Yasser, Manjuri, am I wrong, or am I?
Adam, the finance one, maybe. I mean, that's maybe a bias.
Adam, yeah, you're not wrong, but we're talking about credibility. This is the Arsene Wenger problem. Do you remember when Arsene Wenger was hired by Arsenal? Like, there was immediate resistance to say, who is this guy? A French guy, we don't know him. He hasn't played football at high level. He's got to be terrible. Obviously, turns out to be one of the best managers the Premier League's ever seen. And I think right now we will still have that issue. You've got to kind of win the argument early on, and you've got to persuade the team how that ship is going to be moving. So go ahead. Yes.
Just add a quick point. I think there is an element where it does require some understanding of TA. For example, TA is one of the functions that does have hard KPIs, like a sales function. So that appreciation of, like, okay, we've got a target, we need to deliver by X, Y, and Z. That's something that not everybody has. And that makes you very resilient as well. So as a TA leader, you have to be definitely very resilient, very thick-skinned, because you get a lot of the complaints, none of the glory. You only get the glory with the candidates, really, if you're on the ground. And so I kind of agree with you. It doesn't really matter what kind of leader you are, but you do have to have an appreciation for the TA space to some degree. And I guess it's the same with rewards. I'm sure there's some shortfalls on my side why I'm not the perfect fit. But, in my organization, I am the right fit at the moment, most likely because I'm just available. My leaders have probably said, you know what, he could take it on. He knows how to do from A to B. Let's just give it to him. There's some shortcomings, but that's fine. We'll take that risk. And I think that's where we have to kind of weigh out.
Could a sales leader come and run TA?
I wouldn't say so, Adam. Just to add to what Yasser said, I think there are more nuances to TA than sales. There are definitely more nuances, especially where we are sitting today, with our venture capitalists asking more for profit and not to throw people at the problem. Your staff cost goes up like hell. So you're looking at TA, which is not just a go out and buy problem. It's actually looking at borrow. It's looking at grow. It's looking at end to end. So I wouldn't say that just a sales leader can come and run TA there. And you have to have some kind of foundational knowledge, because let's face the world that we are living in. Maybe somebody who's in a very big organization like Accenture and all, it's a luxury. But in our kinds of organizations, we still have to sometimes get our hands dirty with even figuring out, okay, if something is really going wrong and there's a second level escalation, what is going wrong? Why is the time to hire like this? Where do we get into details? And that's where I also see the challenges where I'm in conversation with the talent leader who's actually from L&D, taking over the entire team. And these are the questions that she has. How do you measure productivity? How can you benchmark this, et cetera, et cetera? I'm sure she'll get there, but these are certain challenges that you'll come across until and unless your world in TA is fixed and you have somebody strong there to depend on.
Yeah, I think the answer is they probably could. It just doesn't happen because there's almost always a more likely option elsewhere. And it's about ramp up time, isn't it? It's like, how long do you want to give this person if they're completely new to the people game? Let's say they are sales, or there's, why not a CTO or whatever. They're going to have to learn so much. Most companies will not tolerate having that degree of ramp up time. They just want it immediate. So if a person could do it in 6 months compared to a person who's already there, do it in 2 months, you're going to go with the person that's got a shorter ramp. So anyway, that's my take on it. Okay, we're going to move quickly on because we've got to bring Christine and Brandon on. Before we let Yasser and Manjuri go, give us one lesson that you've learned in this journey that you've been on that you can impart on someone else that may be thinking of the same thing or hesitating, let's say, on embracing further opportunities. What would that advice be? Anybody, well, whoever's feel ready to answer, go ahead.
Someone said this to me the other day: everything's going to be fine, and if it's not, wait till it's not fine, and it'll be fine then as well. So I think not to worry and just keep asking questions.
I would say just look at where you are, how clean and set up your house is, and then just take the step forward in experimentation with a project, with a program, and then spread your wings and ask for more.
Yeah, love both of those things. Stay curious, and ask casually. You don't, just make sure that's always bubbling away. And then your point, Manjuri, doesn't have to be just take on the whole department ASAP. It's like there may be a project floating around that needs to be done, and just go ahead and do that, and that may bridge you into it. Fantastic stuff. Okay, Yasser Ahmed, Ahmad Jersey, Manjuri Sina, great to see you both. Thanks for coming on to the show. We'll bring you back for further conversations later on the year, guys.
Thank you. See ya. Bye, Adam. Bye, home.
Cool. Really good to see those two. Folks, before we bring Brandon and Christine on to the show, quick 2 things I want you to do. If you're on Crowdcast, can you just check out the poll? I want you to answer the poll. So on the right-hand side of your screen, there should be a poll option. Just click on that and let me know how you currently feel about potentially expanding scope. I'd love to get general vibe from you on this. And secondly, we always do this in the middle of every show because it is very important that Brainfood Live is a conversation starter, not a conversation ending show. We want to make sure that people are able to continue this topic of conversation, this dialogue, even after we come off air. So if you're interested in doing that and speaking to other people who've made this journey from TA to T everything, go ahead and grab your LinkedIn URL and share it in the chat stream if you're watching this on Crowdcast. If you're watching this on LinkedIn or anywhere else, Facebook, Twitter, or whatnot, grab your LinkedIn URL, share it in the comment thread there, and then connect to everyone who's done the same. Because I think that way, you're going to walk away 20, 30, 40 connections that care about this topic. Go and hit them up afterwards. Go and have a chat with them and share some knowledge as to how you can be effective in making this move. Okay, cool. Very interesting to see the vote. 0 people are saying they're only staying in TA. So I guess we've set it up a little bit like that. But yeah, it's interesting that people generally are up for expanding it on. Okay, let's bring on Brandon. He's been waiting a long time. We'll accept him on stage. Christine, I hope she's here. I think I saw her earlier. Accept, is that right?
Just while we're bringing Christine and Brandon on, like, what do people in the chat think about my comment around like we need to broaden to establish how do we at a corporate level, how do we get our tasks completed, not just how do we hire, how do we get, as a company, how do we get our tasks completed? Because I think that businesses are clearly going to have, like the very biggest businesses are clearly going to have less people, you know, in the future, and so the like dynamism of corporate structures and organizational design has never been as high. So I'd be interested to know what people think about that.
Adam, I've got a good one on that.
Go ahead, Bram.
I was going to say, like, as we think about the scope expanding, it's really a simple exercise to just break down the areas of the candidate and employee life cycle, identify the 2 to 3 workflows for each, and then baking those into the expanded scope of the supercharged talent individual. And we talked about custom agents. We're going to have the ability to then operationalize AI across, say, 10 to 15 specific workflows in that expanded scope, making us more full cycle. And I think that's truly the answer is like, okay, what process can I just make faster and outsourced to my agent?
Yeah, I think sorry, Brandon. But I think Microsoft will roll this into us whether we want it or not. People who use it and get better at it is clearly going to be more efficient. There's no question about that.
I think that's part of it, and I agree.
Let's introduce our guys. So Brandon, why don't you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Brandon. I am the director of talent at TLDR, the newsletter startup. If you're not tuned into TLDR, it is the best place to get your tech startup news. Excited to be here.
Great stuff. And Christine, great to see you. How was your holiday in Sri Lanka, firstly?
Yeah, it's great. I'm a little jet lagged, admittedly, but all good. I want to say I'm refreshed, but I'm not really.
You need another week. I get it. For the people who don't know you, can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do, Christine?
Sure. Hi. I'm currently the head of talent and people at Quantum Motion. So we're a quantum computing startup. Background has predominantly been in TA, in product and tech. So when I joined Quantum Motion, I was the head of talent and brand. Actually, at the time it was called media, but I transitioned into the people role this time last year, actually. So I've been doing this full 360 role for about a year. So it was interesting to hear both Yaz and Manjuri's experiences earlier, because I was furiously, again, also taking notes.
Yeah, well, listen, the reason why I wanted to bring you two on is simply because of where you're at on the journey. You're earlier in the journey than Yas and Manjuri. So Christine, you've done 12 months. Brandon, I remember our chat in Denver. It's like you're just stepping into that role, right? So it's the TA and then expanding in. So this is perfect because it's still fresh in your mind. You're not jaded by the responsibilities. You understand how that all feels. How did the opportunity come your way? Let's start there. Maybe Christine, we go with that. Do you remember sort of how this emerged as an opportunity?
Yeah, definitely. So I think even when I started, I've made it very clear I'm TA. I can do some of the HR elements, more specifically L&D. So I've done like hiring manager training, more specifically with recruitment training. So it was very clear from the outset. But this time last year, when I was going through my annual reviews, at the time I was reporting straight to the CEO. He said, listen, people are already coming to you for their day-to-day. You might as well take this full-on people position. And I think my initial reaction was actually pushed back. I said, look, I'll be very clear with you. I don't have a CIPD. Everything that kind of came out, it was like this massive imposter syndrome situation. I don't know all the rules and regulations. And I think I remember explicitly him saying, it's okay. We can cover the gaps. I think you just need to let us know what that is. But we think, you can do it. So it actually did take a little bit of a push internally for me to step up. So I think having that reassurance was really helpful. So to cover the gaps, we have a kind of external HR partner that I call up if we have anything to do with like disciplinaries or anything I need to know or anything I don't know that I need to know. I'll give them a call and I'll just deliver it internally. So yeah, it came up because I think the internal team kind of pushed me that way.
No, that's really important point because I think a lot of people will encounter exactly this. Like it may not be a natural progression this way. Oftentimes it's a vacancy that the company either can't fill or doesn't want to fill, or they may have a strategic sort of view that this is the direction it goes, but they may not have involved you in that conversation about that view until the moment they say, here's the expansion of scope. And that sense of I can't do this may well be quite normal because you've never done it before. And let's not forget, these disciplines have evolved fairly independently. We go to different conferences, for instance. We have different qualifications. Yeah. Oftentimes, we perceive as the personality set is different. So yeah, it may not be maybe a natural thing to push back and say, look, this isn't me. But I love the fact they were welcoming with that. And then provision the opportunity for you to lean on external resource to fill in those gaps as you're learning as you go. Really good. Brandon, let's go with you on this. You just got this job. Did you get the job as a combined role, or did you get it as TA and then they threw extra at you? What was the situation there?
Yeah, it's interesting, Hung. So I'm one of those people that fell into recruiting. Like, I started, and I mean, to be reductionist, I got my first HR job because I was a millennial that knew how to use Facebook. And this is back like before LinkedIn had a news feed, and it was like hybrid role of marketing, TA coordinator, employer brand, recruiting. And candidly, I was just willing to do stuff that no one else was willing to do. And I think that's what it takes to be a scrappy recruiter in certain environments. But it's all about growing a pie-shaped skill set. And I've fluctuated like in and out of marketing, in and out of recruiting. So I got this role with TLDR just candidly. I cold emailed the founder. I was running a fractional recruiting shop. I went out on my own, started a recruiting agency, and I sent him a cold email from a biz dev perspective, thinking it was going to be a client. Within a few conversations, I realized, hey, I can put my fractional practice on pause. The scale and scope of the role expanded, and it's all about having that consultative approach with our client stakeholders. So I went in and, said, hey, here's how I would approach these deliverables. And he said, hey, actually, you can help me see around corners. I wasn't thinking about it this way. I thought I needed a recruiter. I actually need a first talent person. Do you want to join us? And I think from there, it's just aligning with the team, and I'm grateful for it. I think the beauty of recruiting is like we can wear many hats, and it doesn't necessarily require us to tie our like identity to our tax status. If I'm going to do some fractional stuff, 1099 for a bit, if I'm going to jump in-house on our startup rocket ship, I'm just here to have some fun.
You know what? That's a really great story. I love the fact that you cold emailed them on the sales side, but also you were able to develop a relationship where they were receptive to your commentary and recommendation. Do I understand that they didn't have any recruiter role internally at that time? Like, what was the landscape internally as you walked in? Was there a team there of any type, or what was the story there?
So TLDR is actually pretty cool. The founder, Dan Nee, built it solopreneur style as a newsletter, automated through his own kind of network and leveraging contractors. And there's some articles out there that I can drop in the chat about how he built it. And then it took off. So he has leveraged contract, fractional talent, and then the team grew. So we're 15 folks. And we're excited to expand. We're hiring across account executives, partnerships directors for the media space. So it's throwing fuel on the fire and building out those processes kind of out of happenstance.
Yeah, really good. So actually, this tells us a few things. Number one, an early stage business is actually perfect if you wanted to have an expansive role. Even if you self-identify within a certain way, you're the most proximate person dealing with people issues. So it will come to you in any case. Same as you mentioned, Christine. People are coming at you anyway. What are you going to do? Decide that's not in my job description? Of course not. You're going to talk to this person. You're going to try and help. And eventually the scope may just expand beyond the JD organically rather than anything else. TLDR is great, by the way. I mean, obviously I run a newsletter myself, but so folks who follow me, if you're interested in newsletters, TLDR is obviously fantastic resource for a lot of tech content, and it's too long. Didn't read, so therefore it's going to give you concision and summaries. Give us a problem, Christine, that you encountered that basically came down to the fact that you inherited extra responsibilities you didn't anticipate. What's something that comes to mind there?
I think there's quite a lot. Now that I'm back from holiday, because I was off for the first time in like 10 days since I've started. I think it's maintaining that operational aspect. I think coming from a TA background, you're really mindful of things like candidate experience, making sure everyone's fed back at the right time. And when I came back, I just had a barrage of emails from candidates going, you said you were going to update me 2 weeks ago. I haven't heard back yet. What's the latest? So I realized, actually taking a step back and focusing on other things. So one aspect here was performance reviews. I haven't actually run performance. I've been on the other side of it, but I haven't actually run a performance appraisal process before. We did a very lightweight version when I joined 2 years ago. We were 12 people, and then now we're 55. So, and our teams have grown from like just 2 teams now to about 7. So, on top of that, we've got sometimes we've got new hiring managers as well, straight out of academia, who's never run an appraisals process. So it's actually then trying to prioritize your time, right? So I think one of the biggest challenges I'm facing currently right now is how do I stay operational and ensure I still deliver that candidate experience as aspect, but also ensure all the priorities internally, like ensuring managers feel like they're being looked after. I think that's one of the key things I need to unlock right now. So yes, I am speaking to RPOs for anyone out there, and I'd love to kind of hear anyone's feedback on how that process looks like. But it's just kind of
what did you just say there, Christine? Your inbox is going to be crushed by RPOs pinging you just now. I mean,
we already have a short list, so yeah, the short list is there. So, but it's just understanding, where do I spend my time versus staying hands on. And I think a part of me is always going to prefer the TA side of things, right? That's where my bread and butter is. So yeah, it's just understanding where to best spend my time. I think that's what I'm struggling with the most.
And you know what? That's actually really interesting because you may well have preferences. So we're talking about expanding scope, and you can expand scope as wide as you like. But there's going to be some stuff you just don't want to do. I mean, you can imagine, let's say, I don't know, just pick one, comp and bends, let's say. That's a very different type of job, I would say, to TA, probably different mentality, different type of skill set, different tooling. Do you want to get deep into that? I don't know. I mean, but is it possible to manage it? But this is probably where you need to think about bringing people in that do love that job. So I think it reminds me of what Yasser mentioned. You don't necessarily need to be deep expert at this. In fact, that may be a problem because you don't want to get into the weeds. You've got to take the overview and then start building out that department underneath. So
policies as well, like writing policies. You realize, employee handbook hasn't been updated since day one. And someone told me actually really wise words to say, now's the time to make an impact. Like, I don't find policies like entertaining at all. But if now's the time to make a change on how we look at maternity leaves or paternity leaves policies, you guys just got to rewire your brain on how you can actually approach this project if we don't actually have that experience or don't find it interesting like I do.
Yeah, really good point. And Brian, we'll go to you in a sec, but I just want to make one point here that TA is one of those jobs, very similar to anybody who's done recruitment. I'm sure everyone's watching this has done that. It's a never-ending job simply because you could always do one more candidate. You can always get one more person in there. It just never ends. There's a concept called optimal stopping, and we need to understand what that means. Optimal stopping means there's a point whereby extra time is just simply not worth the ROI, even if it's not perfect as a result. There's other stuff you've got to do because you're one person, you've got finite time. So we've got to try and adopt that mentality if we're expanding scope. TA, one thing, that's a never-ending kind of money pit of time, if you want to think about it. But you've got to set a limit to how much you do there because there's other stuff that you need to do. Okay, Brandon, let's go to you on this. How are you making impact in the non-TA aspects of the job right now? Like, how does work appear in TLDR for you on the non-TA side?
Yeah, it's funny. I think it's structured and unstructured. So part of like the onboarding process and the assessment process conversations that I had with the founder was like, hey, here's like my recommendation. Here are the deliverables. Here's like a statement of work. And I just operationalized the interview process and reverse engineered it for how I actually want to implement it to the organization. So it's, hey, weekly stand-up Monday morning, like let's tackle these 3 mandates. And then throughout the week, it's asking a couple of questions on Slack as I onboard. And it's like, oh, that uncovers a rock and that add it to the project scope. I love, Christine, that you mentioned like mat leave policy. That was week 2. It was like, oh, let's spin up the parental leave policy and have some fun doing that. So when I think about like new projects, it keeps me interested because I don't want to be like layered and siloed, heads down, doing the same thing day in, day out. From a recruiting perspective, we have those sourcing motions that are not too dissimilar to sales. Like you just got to put in the inputs on outbound prospecting. But I don't want to do that 60 hours a week. So as I think about the work that pops up, it's having really deep listening with the employees, understanding their motivations, recognizing and pattern matching across different clients I've served in the past, because I think that's the silver lining of layoffs. I've been through a handful. I've worked with a bunch of clients. Going out on my own and having multiple clients helps me now in-house with one sole project to say, you know what, I saw this. We need to implement this project at this stage, or this is actually less of a priority for a 15-stage person company than a 500-person stage company. And really recognizing where are our limitations, how do we double down on strengths in an early stage company. I think HR tends to like overestimate our impact at times, and it's healthy to bring in the experts. Parkinson's law says that our work expands to the time that we have to do it. So how can I make the most impact with the most finite resource?
Yeah, Parkinson. By the way, that's a great book. I forget what the name of the book was, but it's a kind of a comedy book. But it's a really good take. It's there's truth in the humor essentially. And it's a fantastic management tome. So yeah, no worries, Adam. Thanks for joining. We'll get you back ASAP. I think you're back next week anyway, so we'll see you soon, mate. Okay, final question on this to you both. With regards to you're talking about the priority list. There's business as usual on the recruiting side. We understand that might scale up or down given the fact that something might happen, a fundraise, a big deal gets sort of closed or whatever it might be. But then there's all those other peripheral projects that now in your expanded scope, you've got to bring into a greater view. Now, doing a weekly stand-up, I think, is a great move. But is there any system or tools that you're using to control the project flow? Like it could just be a spreadsheet, I guess, or it could be a whiteboard. Like, is there anything that you're looking at or tool-wise that help you and other people understand, how you're choosing these priorities?
Christine, go first.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. So I've got like my hiring update meeting that's just on a spreadsheet. But in terms of like actual HR and other project priorities, it's just between myself and our COO. Everything is on ClickUp. It's basically Jira for any of you that hasn't heard of it. So I kind of collaborate with my COO and my CEO and decide, okay, which area should we focus on like this month. As with, I don't know if it's a project management framework, but usually we say just keep 3 projects on the go at once. So, anything more than 3 or less than 3 is not ideal. But if we can just get 3 going in each time, I think that's the metric we tend to look at. But it's a Jira board type scenario.
No, that's really good to know. I think 3 is a good number. Sometimes you can I can imagine a to-do list just expanding into like a hellscape, because there is also infinite amount of work to do in every discipline. So do 3 at a time, just knock them out as they go. Brandon, what's your technique and tooling to manage the projects here?
Yeah, I'll be honest. When I went out on my own, it was a forcing function to get good at the areas of business that I didn't have experience in. And part of that is how do we just optimize our workflow? What do you need to pay for? What can you get away with on a freemium account? So I'm a tech guy, I work in startups. I live and breathe Notion. Notion isn't sponsoring this podcast, but it'd be cool if it was. So Notion definitely hit up Hung. And in terms of like other tools, like I usually just build my own CRM and run Kanban style. My first tech job was an organization that really operationalized the principles of Kaizen and Toyota's infrastructure for managing people and projects. And I'm a big believer that it's great to have big creative ideas, but just constantly reprioritizing what are the 3 or 4 most important high leverage opportunities for the business. You can color code it or whatever, but yeah, I live and breathe by a little Kanban database that I build in Notion. Super easy.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. Great. Listen, guys, this has been a great conversation. I'm sure something you've actually given me an idea as to how we move forward. Actually, what is the tooling? What is the sort of approach that we use? That I think that would be an interesting Brainfood Live to do, because I think everyone just like creates their own. Inevitably you DIY it, but would it be interesting to share a few of these things and say, actually, we're using this. This seems to work. Blah blah boom. Let me know in the comments, folks. Would that be interesting to do? Kind of like a recruitment ops or maybe a people ops how-to on tooling, dashboards, processes. let me know. Yeah, maybe even a tech stack share. That would be quite a cool idea. Okay, great. Listen, final question to both of you. A bit of advice to someone who's currently pure TA right now, but thinking about moving in, or thinking, you know what, I want this also for my career. What would you say to that person? Christine, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I actually had a good chat with Salim. You know, remember Salim a few weeks ago about this, where he also took on a more people role. But I think we're just trying to also recession-proof our careers. I think, you know, transitioning from TA to HR is a very good move, especially in this market, and who knows what's going to happen in the future. So I'd say go all in. But of course, you know, be self-aware enough to understand your blind spots, and, you know, also push back on areas when on that you don't know, or, you know, throw yourself into the deep end as well. But yeah, just don't say yes to everything as well, because I learned that the hard way.
Yeah, you got to learn to say no, but
Yeah.
we also got to be realistic. There's I hope we don't have this ulterior motive, but I don't see there's any reason why we shouldn't be explicit about it. It makes sense to have multiple skills and to be super valuable to your company. And if you could do more than one thing, that's going to make you more valuable. This actually goes back to the talent density conversation we had right at the beginning of the show. Become talent dense yourself. Okay, Brandon, what are your thoughts on this? Advice to a person who's thinking about it. We had 60% of people say they want to get into this, but they haven't yet. So, so what would you say to those folks?
My advice is be curious, move and communicate with conviction, and be adaptable in your goals. Imposter syndrome is for imposters. Be decisive, take charge of your own career, explore your interests, and change your goals. For 10 years, I thought I wanted to work as a recruiter at Google. And when I had that phone call, I turned it down because I realized my goals changed. And that allowed me to do what I actually want to do and apply my strengths, which is develop a pie and comb shaped skill set and make more of an impact within an organization and with founders, despite the security and prestige. So be curious, be adaptable, have conviction. And if you're not having fun recruiting, go do something else.
You know what? Let's leave it at that, Brandon. That's a really good point. You've got to have a smile on your face doing the job, because if you're a miserabilist and you're not happy, guess what? You're going to exude that negativity no matter whether you're recruiting people or whatever it is that you're doing within that function. So make sure it aligns with the stuff that you enjoy. Okay, Christine, Brandon, wonderful to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining. I'll catch up both of you soon, hopefully.
Thanks, Hung. See you, Christine.
Thank you. Good to meet you.
Wasn't that great, everybody? What a wonderful show. I hope you enjoyed that. I certainly did. Always more to say on Brainfood Live. And yeah, I am deeply thinking about maybe doing a different style show where we actually have no time limit, just keep talking. But I've got to figure out exactly how to squeeze that into my time. Big news, folks. No show next week. A No Brainfood Live next week. Why is that? It's because I've got a 3-day sprint where I'm just doing like 3 events. And I'm going to be in Berlin, in Warwick, in different places. Simply couldn't squeeze it in. Rather, I didn't want to take the risk of being on the road when these things were happening. So no Brainfood Live next week. However, the schedule for the next 5 weeks is out. I will be emailing each of you on this. But if you can't wait for the email, you can just follow the channel Brainfood Live, or you follow the channel Hung Lee, should I say, on Crowdcast, and you can see all of the events coming up. We've got 3 founders focuses coming up. We've got Max Armbruster of Talk Push. We've got Bob Hyman of Sapia AI. We've got Rod Smith of Glide Talent. And we've got a bunch of really interesting shows, including skills-based hiring, how to do public speaking, and also part 2 of the future of job board and job board advertising. So all of it, very exciting. It's all ready to go. Make sure you follow the channel if you enjoy this type of conversation. And I'll be seeing you probably in about, 12 days time. I think the next one is the Founders Focus with Max. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.